Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Bob Mendelsohn, and this is the Bob's Your Uncle podcast. Today we speak about comic books and the cartoon industry. Why is it so very popular? And also how to raise a family on a startup salary. You will meet an amazing woman, Siobhan Coombs, right here in Sydney. Thanks for joining me for this Bob's Your Uncle podcast, Season 1, Episode 6. Of note, the opinions are strictly my own and those of any of my guests. You can now find us and comment to us wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple iTunes, the list goes on. We have lots of topics to discuss. Even so, on the Bob's Your Uncle podcast, you are part of the show. We do want to see and hear you. Send us a message on Facebook or Instagram. In the weeks to come, we'll speak about pickleball, country music, Israel, Iran, wars and rumors of wars. Let's see where the spirit takes us. Whether you're at home, online, on the road with me in your headset, at the gym, or out for your evening constitutional, wherever you get podcasts, that's where we will be. Thanks for being with us for these 18 minutes. Amanda, you've been booking my travel for years, and you know I'm a very loyal United Mileage Plus member. Does everyone stay this loyal to one frequent flyer program, and what's the point of frequent flyer programs anyway?
Well, I think you summed it up a little bit right there. Is the whole point is loyalty. So the airlines want you to stay with them and have you keep traveling with them. But definitely not everybody stays loyal to one. And depending on the scheme, a lot of people will have multiple points programs and never really get anywhere with the benefits.
What are the benefits of staying with one frequent flyer program? And is one really better than any other?
Benefits really range depending on who the program is through. So here in Australia, we've got the good ones with Virgin's Velocity and the Qantas Frequent Flyer, and you can redeem your points for anything from flights to accommodation to wine to things that are in their stores. There's some that do allow family pooling, so that's really cool as well, like Virgin Velocity or Air New Zealand Share Points, and that's where you can have all the family members pool their points into one account, and it helps you earn your status faster.
How does a travel agent help with frequent flyers? Is this something you can assist with?
I can always ensure that your frequent flyer is added into your travel booking and make sure that we're searching for flights that do allow you to accrue, even if it's not with the points program's airline. The other big one is, and I'm sure you know because we've gone over this many times, is ensuring that you're in the right booking class. And this is something that can be quite challenging. So if you're looking to do an upgrade, often you need to be in a particular booking class with those flights, which isn't usually the cheapest, and it can be quite tricky. So having a travel agent who knows how to navigate that can actually help you to get those upgrades.
It's a joy. Thanks so much, Amanda.
Have a great day. Bye.
On this date in history, 5 April in 1588, English philosopher and political theorist Thomas Hobbes, best known for his publications on individual security and the social contract, was born. He had nothing to do with the cartoon of Calvin and Hobbes, and neither did John Calvin for that matter. Then, nearly 3 centuries later, in 1856, American educator and reformer Booker T. Washington, who was the first president and principal developer of Tuskegee University, was born in Virginia. And that's the historical marker of the week. Today we welcome to the podcast a woman I've known for many years. She hails from here in Sydney, and in her youth she wanted to be a Shakespearean actress. Now she's a seller of comics. This will be a fun one. She's a joy to be with, and I think you will enjoy our interview. Siobhan, welcome to the podcast. Let me ask, you're a mother of 2 young toddlers, and yet you've launched a business with one other lady right here in Sydney and online. How is that even possible?
Well, thank you so much for having me first. I would say it is one of the crazier things that I've done. It's definitely a lot of hard work, And I think there's probably more convenient times in my life that I could have done it. But I would also say that I think I wouldn't have been able to do it before I had children. I think that having children has been a very transformative experience for me, and it's turned me into a much harder worker than I ever thought I could be. But I suppose the real answer is I have a huge amount of support. My wonderful partner, Nate, does a huge amount of childcare, completely supports what I'm doing, and, helps out in a whole bunch of ways. We have family members who do a huge amount of childcare for us as well. So it's a team effort, I would say.
Comics are for children, right? But you sell your comic books to adults most of the time. How does that work?
Well, I would say that comics are for children, absolutely, but comics are for everyone. I would say that most people, whether they realize it or not, enjoy comics. They enjoy, stories told with pictures and words. And I think that there has always been an adult interest in comic books. Like if you look at things like when superhero comics first started in America, one of the reasons they really took off was because so many men were reading them in the trenches during World War II. And so it wasn't just children consuming them, it was adults. I think that the West is slowly catching up with the European and the Japanese comics markets, where there's always been a much greater diversity of stories being told, and lots more books that are catered towards adults, I would say. There's a funny thing in America. But there was this thing called the Comics Code Authority, which was started in the 60s, I think, because this guy wrote this book called The Seduction of the Innocent, which was basically about how comic books were polluting the minds of the young. And so they brought in all of these rules and restrictions about what could or could not be shown in comic books. And they didn't have that in Europe or in Asia. And so there were much more adult stories being told, whereas the stories being told in America were a bit more conservative, maybe, or more aimed at children. And I think now that's changing because I think there's a real desire for it.
Why do you think the major film studios are finding such a winning formula using comic book characters as both the heroes and the villains? What does society want by attending and watching these movies?
I think that superheroes particularly are very attractive to modern audiences because they offer a very clear black and white, good and evil kind of view, and you know that the good guy's going to win in the end. There's never usually a sort of real downbeat ending where the bad guy wins. And I think that it's quite hard to find stories like that these days. Everything's much more nuanced, and so something where there's a good guy and a definite bad guy, that's quite comforting, I think, for people.
To good guys.
Yes. And also, they're cool. They have cool powers and they have cool costumes, and I think people like those.
When did heroes become superheroes? What makes a hero into a superhero?
I think it's about a certain level of, because you could say it comes down to powers, but there's plenty of superheroes who don't have powers, like Batman or Iron Man, for example. And I think it's about having a sort of superhuman level of commitment to justice and that desire to go above and beyond for the common man, perhaps.
There is a longing in humanity for that, for the good to triumph over evil.
Absolutely.
Do you think comics originally were cave drawings?
Well, this is something I've done sort of school talks for children a couple of times about the history of comics, and I sort of make the point that for millennia we have been telling stories with pictures and words combined. And so could you say that, the Bayeux Tapestry, that could be a comic book? It's a story told in a picture. You could say that hieroglyphics are almost comic book-like. So yeah, I think that there's always been a real... It's a fabulous medium for communicating, I think.
Startups have to climb a steep curve in public notice, don't they? Are you hoping to have a brick and mortar store one day? Do you use pop-up markets and even pop-up seasonal stores to build your comic book audience?
Definitely. We are currently doing quite a lot of markets. We do glebe markets fairly regularly. I think I'm in a good position for this particular store because I'd been working in the comic book industry for over a decade, and so I have a very solid network within the Australian comic book community. A lot of people know who I am, a lot of people are interested in what I'm doing, so I was lucky to have that as a little step up. We're definitely hoping to have a brick and mortar store one day because there's lots of things that we would like to do that's not really possible without having our own space, or at least it's much more difficult without having our own space. A lot of the kind of community building things that I like to do within comics are sort of not especially possible.
Do you ever want to go back to Shakespeare on stage and act? And if so, what would be your most desirable role to play?
That's a tricky one. I mean, definitely, yes, I would really love to do that one day when I have a minute to find the time to do it. I mean, I really love the comedies, I suppose. I would love to play like Viola, or I mean, it's incredibly tempting to just say something totally wild like Hamlet, like that's the dream. Or I reckon I could do a good
to
Lady
dream
Macbeth.
or not to dream. That's
Exactly.
a question.
Exactly.
So you'd like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I have a lot of fun doing.
You don't ship your products overseas yet, do you?
No, it's very expensive at the moment. It's a bit prohibitive at this exact moment. But if there was a huge desire for people living overseas to access more Australian-made comic books, then I would definitely be interested in the future in servicing that.
Where do you source your comics most of the time?
So I mostly try to source my books directly through independent publishers, or ideally the creator themselves, whatever is going to get the most money for the people making the books.
Well, you want everybody to win. You want to...
Exactly.
Everybody gets a quid.
Exactly.
Okay.
Independent publishers.
How do people contact you?
You can email us at store@cockatoocomics.com. You can sign up to our newsletter, The Sticky Beak, at cockatoocomics.com, or you can follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram, and just at Cockatoo Comics.
Do you have some relation to cockatoos? Is there something... Where'd the name come from?
It was actually my partner Nate who suggested it, and we were just sort of playing around trying to think of a name that suited us. We don't want to be the most traditional comic book store, so I think a lot of comic book stores go for a certain like Kapow or All Star, or there's a certain kind of Americana to it.
The incredible comic book store.
Exactly. And we want to show people that
One in a minion.
One of our goals is we want to show people that we're local and we're accessible and friendly. We're not just for adults, we're also for kids. We're for everyone, ideally. And something Australian. And there's so many cockatoos in the area that we live in, and I just love them. I think they're so cheeky.
You could call it screech.com. My goodness, that's what I think of with the yellow-crested
Yes, absolutely.
cockatoos.
Very noisy.
They are. Is there anything else you want to tell the audience?
Read more comic books.
And what will they gain when they do? Okay, so everybody gets on and says, oh, the power of words and the power of pictures and good versus evil. You've highlighted that. So what are they going to get from the incredible Batman, or whatever they are, that they're not going to get from, well, they might even get it from Nancy or Archie.
Yeah, I mean, two of my all-time favorite comics, Nancy and Archie, I would say. I think that it's a medium unlike any other because of you can tell stories in such a way, you can frame stories in such a particular way, and it has so few rules and so few boundaries, so you can get almost anything you want out of comics. There's this local cartoonist, a man called Pat Grant, who says that comics are less like traditional illustration and they're more like an extension of the individual's handwriting. And that's something that I really enjoy with comics. It's a very intimate experience from the cartoonist's brain down their arm, through their hand and into your book. And I just think I just love that experience.
Your business partner, what's her name?
Annie Huang.
Annie. And she is an artist?
She's a multimedia artist, so she does a lot of traditional illustration. She also does like video editing, and she also works with textiles.
But this is the only thing, except for motherhood, you are involved in.
Currently, yes, I don't have time for anything else.
I understand. Well, Siobhan, it is a joy. Thanks for being on our 6th podcast. It's pretty exciting. And I wish God's best to you, your partner, your business partner, those 2 little kids of yours, gorgeous, I'm sure, and then the venture of Cockatoo Comics.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Bob.
Every week we will read a verse or 2 from the #1 bestseller of nonfiction since Gutenberg went to press over 500 years ago. Today's reading is from the ancient prophet Jeremiah, chapter 16. O Lord, my strength and my stronghold, and my refuge in the day of distress, to you the Gentile nations will come from the ends of the earth and say, Our fathers have inherited nothing but falsehood, futility, and things of no profit. Therefore, behold, I'm going to make them know. This time I will make them know my power and my might, and they shall know that my name is the Lord. Do you have a comment or question? Do you have an agreement or an argument? Hit us up on bobmendo@aol.com or on Twitter or Instagram on Bob's Your Uncle PC. We will read your views next week. Don't forget, post a review on iTunes or Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you're listening, and share our podcast with your mates, your friends, everyone you know. Word of mouth, word of email. That's the way to get the word out there. Thanks for helping us get known. Also, please follow the podcast or subscribe and hit like or whatever you can do to get good speak out there. Don't forget to book all your travel needs with Amanda McInnes at travelpartners.com.au. Next week, I'll be speaking with an old mate from the middle of the USA, and I'm hoping to have good words about a conclusion of the war in Ukraine. Please, God. Remember to join us wherever you get your podcasts. And until then, from me, Bob Mendelsohn, when things seem bleak or uncertain, look up to God. He's in his heaven. And Bob's your uncle. Shalom from Sydney.